Chapter 7. Ashoka, the Emperor Who Gave Up War. Roshan's rupees. Roshan clutched the crisp notes that her grandfather had given her on her birthday. While she badly wanted to buy a new CD, she always wanted to just see and feel the brand new notes. It was then that she noticed that all of them had a smiling face of Gandhiji printed on the right and a tiny set of lions on the left. What were the lions there for? She wondered. A very big kingdom, an empire. The lions that we see on our notes and coins have a long history. They were carved in stone and placed on top of a massive stone pillar at Sarnath, about which you read in chapter 6. Ashoka was one of the greatest rulers known to history, and on his instructions, inscriptions were inscribed on pillars as well as on rock surfaces. Before we find out what was written in these inscriptions, let us see why his kingdom was called an empire. The empire that Ashoka ruled was founded by his grandfather Chandragupta Maurya. More than 2300 years ago, Chandragupta was supported by a wise man named Chanakya or Kautilya. Many of Chanakya's ideas were written down in a book called the Arthashastra Dynasty. When members of the same family become rulers one after another, the family is often called a dynasty. The Mauryas were a dynasty with three important rulers: Chandragupta, his son Bindusara, and Bindusara's son Ashoka. There were several cities in the empire marked with black dots on the map. These included the capital Patliputra, Takshila, and Ujjain. Takshila was a gateway to the northwest, including Central Asia, while Ujjain lay on the route from north to south India. Merchants, officials, and craftspersons probably lived in these cities. In other areas, there were villages of farmers and herders. In some areas, such as central India, there were forests where people gathered forest produce and hunted animals for food. People in different parts of the empire spoke different languages. They probably ate different kinds of food and wrote different kinds of clothes as well. How are empires different from kingdoms? Emperors need more resources than kings because empires are larger than kingdoms and need to be protected by big armies. So, also, they need a larger number of officials who collect taxes. Ruling the empire. As the empire was so large, different parts were ruled differently. The area around Patliputra was under the direct control of the emperor. This meant that officials were appointed to collect taxes from farmers, herders, craftspersons, and traders who lived in villages and towns in the area. Officials also punished those who disobeyed the ruler's orders. Many of these officials were given salaries. Messengers went to and fro, and spies kept a watch on the officials. And of course, the emperor supervised them all. With the help of members of the royal family and senior ministers, there were other areas or provinces. Each of these was ruled from a provincial capital such as Takshila or Ujjain, although there was some amount of control from Pataliputra, and royal princes were often sent as governors. Local customs and rules were probably followed. Besides, there were vast areas between these centers. Here, the Mauryas tried to control roads and rivers, which were important for transport, and to collect whatever resources were available as tax and tribute. For example, the Arthashastra tells us that the northwest was important for blankets and South India for its gold and precious stones. It is possible that these resources were collected as tribute, unlike taxes, which were collected on a regular basis. Tribute was collected as and when it was possible from people who gave a variety of things more or less willingly. There were also the forested regions. People living in these areas were more or less independent, but may have been expected to provide elephants, timber, honey, and wax to Mauryan officials. Ashoka, a unique ruler. The most famous Mauryan ruler was Ashoka. He was the first ruler who tried to take his message to the people through inscriptions. Most of Ashoka's inscriptions were in Prakrit and were written in the Brahmi script. Ashoka's war in Kalinga. Kalinga is the ancient name of coastal Orissa. See map 5, page 68. Ashoka fought a war to conquer Kalinga. However, he was so horrified when he saw the violence and bloodshed that he decided not to fight any more wars. He is the only king in the history of the world who gave up conquest after winning a war. What was Ashoka's Dhamma? Ashoka's Dhamma did not involve worship of a god or performance of a sacrifice. He felt that just as a father tries to teach his children, he had a duty to instruct his subjects. He was also inspired by the teachings of the Buddha. Chapter 6. There were a number of problems that troubled him. People in the empire followed different religions, and this sometimes led to conflict. Animals were sacrificed, slaves and servants were ill treated. Besides, there were quarrels in families and among neighbors. Ashoka felt it was his duty to solve these problems. So he appointed official known as Dhamma Mahamata who went from place to place teaching people about Dhamma. Besides, Ashoka got his message is inscribed on rocks and pillars, instructing his officials to read his message to those who could not read it themselves. Ashoka also sent messengers to spread ideas about Dhamma to other lands such as Syria, Egypt, Greece, and Sri Lanka. Try and identify these on map 6, pages 76 to 77. He built roads, dug wells, and built rest houses. Besides, he arranged for medical treatment for both human beings and animals.